Doctor, we see discussions here in Sri Lanka centering a lot around the economic crisis. We get a lot of economists even coming on our shows and discussing how Sri Lanka should move forward. There are various opinions, but Sri Lanka as a society, for the longest time, have had issues in the economy, in democracy, and in many other aspects of society that have gone unaddressed. And we saw the final result of all of this, the epitome of the crisis that Sri Lanka faced back when the Aragalaya was at its peak. And today we are here trying to look for solutions, trying to look for a mechanism that suits Sri Lanka for a better tomorrow. Next year is an election year. The president has said it. Everybody's gearing up for elections. You see an increase in party conferences, party meetings that are being held across the country. But it's important that we understand where we are at today in terms of democracy, in terms of our governance structures. Because currently, although we are waiting for the people's mandate at next year's election, as far as the international community goes, as far as the IMF goes, Sri Lanka is still continuing as a country. So where do you think we are at today in terms of democracy, in terms of sovereignty of the people, in terms of fundamental rights of the people being protected as a nation today? Where are we at?
I think we are at a precarious position because we've had, a prolonged period of crisis. I mean, not only the COVID, the pandemic, which of course set all of us back, not only Sri Lanka, but it set our economy back. Then, of course, we had the economic crisis and many, I would say, harebrained policies of politicians that really brought us down to our knees. And the manifestation of the crisis was when we had 14 hours of power cuts, fuel crisis, all that. And then we had the change of government. But, I'm disappointed that after that groundswell of support and rejection by the people of not just the politicians, but the political system. I mean, they kept demanding for a system change. And we haven't had a system change. You just had old wine in old bottles. They just changed them around. So really that fundamental change has not taken place. And in fact, those who are now realigning their alliances and are back in parliament and in government are doing much to really negate the gains of the Aragalaya. I think the political parties, the politicians, and even society at large should really look back and say, how did this happen? How did we come to this state? So I think that learning opportunity seems to be lost. I hope not forever, but maybe temporarily. But we've had so many political crises, even leading to the Yahapalana government in 2015. The people are still demanding for democracy. So even in 2015, when they rejected an established politician, a man who presented himself to the people as, I'm the one who won the war. But nevertheless, he was clearly moving towards a very autocratic position. People rejected him. I mean, the parties that actually won that election, a coalition cobbled together, didn't have resources. They just relied on that groundswell of support from the people. So people want democracy, but there's a disconnect between what the political establishment provides for them and what they want. So I'm not sure how this election will go, but I think people themselves will have to think more. Are we still going to, vote the same parties into power, or maybe give them a smaller or bigger mandate? Is this what we want, or are new people going to come in to politics as well and challenge the system? And I think that is where really our salvation lies in that, because I can't see the present establishment coming up with the ideas that are needed or having the vision, either economic or political vision or social vision, to really lead us out of this situation.
Speaking of new faces or young politicians or people who are not in the current establishment coming into power, one of the arguments that's being propounded, of course, by those in the establishment, by those from the major political parties, is the fact that these new people, they have no experience in governing. We have been governing Sri Lanka for generations, for decades. So we know what should be done, what can be done, and how to get it done. They have absolutely no experience. We have experience. This is not a time to experiment with the country. So give us the mandate and we will steer you to safety.
Where has that experience taken us? I mean, their experience is written large on the balance sheets of this country, in the laws of this country, the chaos that has been brought through them. Is this a record that anyone could be proud of? If I were there, I would have hung my head in shame and sort of hidden the fact that they were responsible for this. A few political families really govern Sri Lanka from independence. So when we look at our 75 years journey, which has been really a regression, and there's really very little to be proud of. We did have the few things that we could have been proud of, I think, were our social and economic indicators. Our investment in health, in education, that social safety net really provided mobility for poorer people to come up. And that was a great achievement. But today, in the context of our liberal economic models, these are seen as expensive things that the country can't afford. So we're cutting back on the education and health that was offered, that was provided as the public good. We're cutting that back to save costs. But as a result of it, really we are denuding our own human resources. So it's a very short-term policy. Now I know we are broke and we have to find the resources to be able to pay for these, but we have to prioritize what are the things we really need. And I think health and education are priorities. Maybe we have to even out our tax bases. I think people are groaning that value-added tax has been raised, which the poor pay as much as the rich, but there could have been a more sensible taxation scheme. Today, even people, who are government servants or who are in the corporate sector, but earning a low salary, I mean, they're from 100,000 really doesn't get you that far in life. So when you land the taxation on them and perhaps not on the companies who make much more, this is a problem. So, you have a very unstable situation because if you look at the new reports, I mean, over 65% of the population is finding it hard to manage, to make basic needs met. Inequality is widening in our society. So these don't really make for a stable society.